Part 1. The smile that didn't reach her eyes. They say when you marry someone, you marry their family too. I used to think that was just a cliche, but I've learned, sometimes the hard way, how deeply true that is. And in my case, I didn't just marry into a family, I married into a war I didn't see coming. When I first met Kayla, my husband's sister, she had this bright, bubbly laugh and a quick wit that made her instantly likable. I remember the first dinner she hosted when Harry brought me home. She'd cooked everything herself: roasted duck, sticky rice, mango salad, flavors that lingered long after the night ended. At the time, I thought I was incredibly lucky to be welcomed into such a loving family. But I missed the way her eyes lingered on Harry when he pulled my chair out for me. I missed the tightness in her jaw when he poured me tea before her. I didn't yet understand that Kayla's love had boundaries, and I was stepping over all of them simply by existing. Back then, I brushed off the cold glances, the backhanded compliments, the way she'd only tag Harry in family photos and crop me out. I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was being overly sensitive. But looking back now, I can see it so clearly. Kayla never wanted me there. She wanted to be the most important woman in Harry's life, and I was a threat. It got worse the more serious Harry and I became. When we got engaged, I expected her to smile and congratulate us. Instead, she walked out of the family dinner where we shared the news, stormed off like a child who hadn't been picked first for a game. Later that night, she sent Harry a voice message. She was sobbing, saying she felt betrayed that he hadn't told her privately first. He played it for me. "I'm your sister," she cried. "I should have been the first to know. I should have been the one you told before anyone else. Do you even remember who's always been there for you?" It made my skin crawl. The way she spoke about her brother, it didn't feel right. Still, I tried to be kind. I sent her a message the next morning saying I hoped we could move past it. She never responded. But a few days later, I got another message from her. A different tone this time. It said, "Don't ever forget who he belongs to. You're lucky I'm even tolerating this engagement." I remember staring at my phone for what felt like hours, trying to decide if I should show Harry. In the end, I didn't. I told myself, she's just hurting. Maybe this is what grief over losing a certain kind of closeness looks like. But the truth? That message shattered something inside me. A quiet, trembling kind of fear started growing. Not fear of physical danger yet, but of what she was capable of. The manipulations, the psychological games, the way she made me feel like an outsider in my own relationship. At the wedding dress fitting, she made a scene in front of my mother and future mother-in-law, mocked my choice of fabric, laughed when I tried on a simple A-line gown, and said I looked plain, like a secretary. I tried to keep my cool, but after months of this, I snapped. I told her she was no longer welcome at the wedding. For a moment, the room went silent. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would be the end of it. But of course, Kayla wasn't going down without a fight. She messaged Harry again that night saying I'd shamed her publicly and that he needed to get his woman under control. That phrase, "get your woman under control," like I was some rabid animal who needed to be leashed. Harry backed me up. One of the few times I really felt protected from her. She did come to the wedding in the end. showed up in a floor-length black gown with a lace veil, like she was attending a funeral. She told guests she was mourning the loss of her brother. It was humiliating. People whispered, avoided her. My mother-in-law eventually pulled her aside and asked her to leave. Kayla made a scene, of course, said she had every right to be there, that I was controlling, that I had poisoned Harry's mind against her. That word, poisoned. It keeps echoing in my head now, given everything that came later, but I'll get to that. After that incident, I put up boundaries, hard ones. I told Harry that I didn't want Kayla around our future children if we were lucky enough to have any. He agreed. And when our son Nate was born, I followed through. She wasn't welcome. Of course, tragedy has a strange way of reshuffling relationships. 2 years after Nate was born, Kayla suffered a miscarriage with her boyfriend Jamie. It was devastating. I wouldn't wish that kind of pain on anyone, not even her. For a while she changed, or at least I wanted to believe she had. She was sweet to Nate, gave him little toys, even sat with him on the floor and read him stories. I started to lower my guard, a little. And for a while, things felt almost normal. We even got invited to a few family events without drama. I thought maybe, just maybe, we were turning a corner. But with Kayla, peace is just a lull between storms. She and Jamie got married later that year. We weren't invited, no explanation, just a message from her saying, "I'm not comfortable with you there. You bring too much tension." Harry was furious. He told her they wouldn't be coming, period. And his parents backed us up. They even refused to pay for the wedding, something they'd promised long ago. That's when Kayla flipped. She called crying, saying I had ruined her life, that I had turned everyone against her. She even blamed me for her previous miscarriage, saying I'd stolen all the attention from her. And yet just a few months later, she showed up at our door, suitcase in hand, saying she needed a place to stay because her marriage was falling apart. We let her in. We always let her in. I look back now and wonder why. Was it guilt, compassion, or just the hope that somewhere beneath all that bitterness, there was a sister waiting to be loved? But Kayla isn't a sister. She's a mirror of resentment. And I've spent far too long trying to polish that mirror, hoping to see something good inside. I didn't know it yet, but the real storm was just around the corner. And the next time she tried to poison my marriage, she wouldn't be speaking in metaphors. Part 2, the plate that almost killed us. I think back on that day often. The sky was so blue, the kind of blue that makes you believe, if only for a moment, that life is clean, soft-edged, forgiving. I wore a cream dress with tiny pearl buttons, the kind that stretched gently over my stomach. Now that I was expecting, I hadn't told many people yet. I wanted it to be special. I wanted the moment we revealed it to Harry's family to feel like a gift. It was his birthday, a big one. His parents had gone all out, banners strung between trees in their backyard, white tables lined with food, friends from high school, cousins from out of town. Everyone who mattered to Harry was there. Everyone, including Kayla. She hadn't been invited, but she had a talent for inserting herself into places she didn't belong, especially when it was about Harry. When I saw her, I felt a strange pull in my stomach, not fear exactly, more like unease laced with déjà vu. The way you feel when you've escaped something once and suddenly find yourself standing in its shadow again. She was dressed in pastel pink, lipstick too bright, laugh too loud. "I've been in therapy," she told me, smiling like she'd just returned from a soul cleanse retreat in Bali. "I'm learning boundaries. I've really changed." I smiled back, lips tight. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about her energy felt off. too light, too cheerful, like helium in a balloon stretched too thin. Still, I kept my cool. Harry asked her to apologize to me properly, and she did, at least in words. Something about the apology felt like a script she'd rehearsed in the mirror that morning, but I nodded. It was his day after all. As the afternoon sun dipped low, Harry stood up to thank everyone for coming. His voice shook a little, just like it had when he proposed to me years ago. He looked at me while he spoke, and I saw the boyish wonder in his eyes again, the way he saw me before all the storms we'd weathered. I felt my hand rest on my stomach instinctively. And then we told them that we were expecting, that Nate would be a big brother. The crowd clapped, shouted, even cried. My mother-in-law pulled me into a tearful hug. My father-in-law kissed Harry's forehead like he was still his little boy. My own parents looked like they were floating with joy. Kayla didn't clap. She turned her head to the side and smiled too late. I should have seen it then. The way her face froze. The way her eyes scanned the table, her fingers drumming on her wine glass. But in the blur of celebration, I pushed the thought away. Maybe, I told myself, she just needs time. I sat down again, heart full and body tired. My legs were starting to ache. Pregnancy has a way of whispering limits even when joy is overflowing. That's when she came over. I want to serve you, Kayla said, voice syrupy. You shouldn't be walking around in your condition. She handed me a plate. It was beautifully arranged. Steamed rice, grilled vegetables, a little helping of fish, and shrimp. Shrimp. Now, I am violently allergic to shrimp. Everyone in the family knows this. I've been to the ER twice for it. Even the smell sometimes makes me break out in hives. I stared at the plate. At first I thought, a mistake. Maybe she forgot, maybe she didn't notice, but Kayla doesn't forget details. She stores them like knives, tucked away until she needs to use them. I didn't say anything. I simply stood up and went to fix another plate. I didn't want a scene. I didn't want to believe what I was beginning to feel. But Jamie, Kayla's husband, walked over at that moment. Hey, he smiled. Congrats again, you're glowing. He glanced at my untouched plate. Not eating? I laughed nervously. Kayla made it. It has shrimp and I'm allergic. Oh? I'll eat it then. Love shrimp. I should have stopped him. I should have grabbed the plate back, but he smiled and I was distracted and the food was gonna waste and God, I still hear myself saying, sure, if you want it. He walked away with it, still chatting with me, still smiling. Not even 5 minutes later, people were screaming. Jamie was on the ground, clutching his stomach, face pale. He was gasping, lips blue at the edges, vomit splattered down his shirt. Someone shouted for an ambulance. Harry ran toward him. Kayla too. But when she reached his side and saw what he was pointing at, the plate, her face changed, like something split inside her, like a mask falling. She turned to me, her eyes wide with something that wasn't confusion. It was calculation. Did you give him your plate? She asked, voice shaking. I nodded slowly, stunned. She froze, looked down at the food, then back at me, and for a brief second, there was something else in her face. Fear. Not fear for Jamie, fear of being found out. The ambulance arrived, the rest was chaos. They took the plate, took Jamie, took Kayla with them to the hospital. Back at the house, the party was over. People stood in clumps, whispering. My father-in-law pulled Harry aside. My mother-in-law held my arm and asked quietly, Are you sure she gave you that plate? I nodded again. I felt like I was underwater. Hours passed. We got word. Jamie had been poisoned. It wasn't just the shrimp. Something had been added. That's when I started shaking. The plate was meant for me. It should have been me in that ambulance. It should have been me writhing on the grass, unable to breathe. Me and the baby inside me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, feeling like my whole body was buzzing with static. Harry sat beside me, eyes bloodshot, face hard. He didn't speak for hours. I wanted to tell him what I knew, that Kayla had smiled too hard, that she'd wanted to hurt me, that maybe she hadn't just wanted to scare me. But how do you tell someone that their sister tried to kill their pregnant wife? How do you say that out loud and still believe the world is good? Part 3. The footage that saved me. That night I didn't sleep. Not even for 5 minutes. The house was silent, but my mind was screaming. Every creak of the old floors, every passing car light through the blinds, my body responded like I was under attack. I felt like prey, not just vulnerable, hunted. Harry paced for hours. He didn't say much, but I could feel something building inside him, like he was trying to choke down the truth, trying to protect a part of himself that didn't want to believe what was becoming so obvious. At around 3 a.m., I whispered, "We need to talk to your parents." He didn't hesitate, just nodded. Quietly, he texted them, and by 7 a.m., they were downstairs in our living room, all of us wrapped in blankets, mugs of untouched tea on the table. I felt like I was about to throw up. But I started talking. I told them everything, from the shrimp allergy to Kayla's smile when she handed me the plate, the way she asked if it was still my dish when Jamie collapsed, how something in her eyes didn't match the panic in her voice. I expected them to look at me like I was crazy, but they didn't. My mother-in-law, quiet and usually hesitant, leaned forward and said, "We have cameras." I blinked. "What?" She gestured to the backyard. "We had a break-in last year. Since then, Phil installed cameras. Discreet ones. They catch everything." Harry's father was already pulling out his phone. It was surreal, like watching a movie where you already know the ending but still hope for something different. There she was, Kayla, walking toward me, a plate in hand, smiling. She bent slightly, said something inaudible, and handed it to me. She hovered, watched me, and then Jamie appeared laughing, reaching for the plate. I stepped aside. He took it. 5 minutes later, he was on the grass. The footage wasn't dramatic. There was no close-up villain reveal, but it was undeniable. Kayla had handed me the food, and within minutes, someone nearly died. Harry stared at the phone, hands shaking. "This is real," I said, my voice cracking. "She could have killed our baby. She could have killed me." I expected him to break down or yell or deny, but Harry surprised me. He looked at me, eyes sharp with clarity. "She's done," he said simply. "She's never coming near you again." My knees went weak, not from fear this time, but from the relief of finally being believed. That night, my in-laws called the police. Quietly, discreetly, they explained what happened, handed over the footage, and then we waited. In the days that followed, I was a ghost in my own life. I couldn't touch food I hadn't cooked myself, couldn't sleep, couldn't even let Nate out of my sight. I kept looking over my shoulder like she might be there, lurking, smiling with that too perfect grin. Then came the call. The police had reviewed the footage. There were traces of a chemical agent, harmless in tiny amounts, lethal to someone with my allergy. They said it wasn't enough to kill instantly, but enough to hospitalize, enough to threaten. And Kayla? She confessed. Just like that. They said she cried during questioning, said she never meant to hurt Jamie, that the plate was never for him, that it was meant for me, that she was hurt and hormonal and just wanted to send a message, as if pain was something you could wrap in foil and serve warm. When I heard those words, she confessed, something inside me snapped and then settled. All the years of gaslighting, all the little digs, the emotional sabotage, the humiliation at my wedding, all of it had led to this moment. And finally, someone outside the family, someone objective, saw her for what she really was. Jamie filed charges. I was stunned at first, unsure if he would, but he did. He also filed for divorce. And suddenly the woman who once believed she controlled the entire narrative was facing real consequences. For the first time in years, I could breathe. It wasn't over, but the fog was clearing, and beneath it I could see the beginnings of something else. Not just survival, but hope. Part 4. When guilt wears your face. People kept telling me I should feel relieved. She was in custody, Jamie was recovering, I was safe, but I didn't feel safe. I felt haunted. Not by her, not even by what she'd done, but by the fact that I let someone else take the hit meant for me. I keep seeing Jamie's face, greenish, clammy, slack-jawed with confusion, as his body gave out beneath him. He didn't even finish his sentence. He was in the middle of asking me what names we were considering for the baby, and then he collapsed. It plays on repeat in my head. The laugh, the hand on the plate, the smile. The moment I said, "Sure, if you want it," I gave him that plate. I didn't know, but I gave it to him. My therapist says that's called survivor's guilt, that it's common for people who narrowly escape harm to punish themselves, especially when someone else takes their place in the line of fire. But it doesn't feel clinical. It feels personal. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the sound of him gagging. Every time I see shrimp at the grocery store, I break into a cold sweat. My doctor told me I needed to eat more for the baby, but I couldn't. I barely touched food that I didn't make with my own hands. I watched expiration dates like they were omens. I threw out entire meals if they smelled even slightly off. Harry tried to understand. He was patient, more than I expected, honestly. But I saw the worry behind his eyes, the way he'd glance at my plate, then at my pale face, how he'd sneak vitamins into my tea just to get something into my body. "I don't know how to fix this," I whispered one night. He held me. "You don't have to fix it," he said. "You just have to survive it." But surviving it meant reliving it over and over. We didn't go to any of Kayla's hearings. We let the legal system handle it. My in-laws gave us updates. That was enough. She pled guilty. She admitted that she'd always resented me, that she wanted Harry to marry someone she approved of, that my pregnancy announcement stole her moment. Apparently, she was going to announce her own pregnancy that same day. It broke my heart to hear she was expecting, because now she wasn't just a woman who tried to poison me. She was a pregnant woman who tried to poison another pregnant woman. And I had no idea what to do with that kind of contradiction. Somehow her pain had curdled into violence. Still, I couldn't forget that before this, before the poison, before the twisted games, Kayla had held my son and made him laugh. She had read books to him on the floor. She had once offered to babysit so I could nap after a rough week. How do you reconcile that person with the one who tried to kill you? It doesn't fit. And maybe that's the heartbreak of trauma. It fractures your sense of reality. One day you're watching someone braid your child's hair. The next, you're wondering if they've laced your food with something deadly. Jamie, meanwhile, was silent. I didn't blame him. After he was discharged, he stayed with friends for a while. Harry tried calling a few times, left voicemails. No response. I wanted to write to him, to say I was sorry, that I wished I could go back, that I should have thrown the plate away. But every time I sat down to write, my hand shook too much to finish. Eventually, Jamie came to us. He showed up at our house without warning. I was in pajamas, hair a mess, holding Nate on my hip. When I opened the door and saw him standing there, thin, still pale but upright, I nearly dropped the glass of milk I was holding. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. I nodded, wordless. Harry joined us on the couch. We sat in silence for a while, like we were waiting for someone else to speak first. And then Jamie looked at me. "I don't blame you," he said. My chest caved in. The sob that came out of me wasn't gentle, it was violent, heaving, ugly. I buried my face in my hands as my body crumpled forward, and Harry's arms wrapped around me from behind. Jamie just sat there, hands on his knees, letting the moment pass. When I finally looked up at him through swollen eyes, he gave a small, tired smile. "I should have seen it," he said. "There were signs. I just didn't want to believe them." We talked for hours that night about Kayla, about what love can look like when it turns sideways, about how grief doesn't always cry, it sometimes poisons. He told us he'd filed for divorce, that it was hard, that he still cared for her in a twisted way, but he couldn't forgive this, and I understood. We hugged him as he left. Harry walked him out, lingered with him on the porch. I watched them from the window, two men caught in the wreckage of a shared betrayal. That night I slept, not well, not fully, but enough to dream. And in that dream I was walking through a hallway of mirrors. Some were broken, some fogged, but one, just one, was clean. And in it, I saw myself. Alive, scarred, pregnant, still standing. Part 5, the day I let her go. It wasn't a courtroom that freed me. It wasn't the guilty verdict. It wasn't even Kayla's absence from our lives. The liberation came quietly. It came in the smallest moments. Like when I made dinner for Nate and realized I hadn't double-checked every ingredient. Or when I walked past the mirror and didn't flinch at my reflection. It began, I think, with the ultrasound. We were in a dim room, just me and Harry, the whirring sound of the machine filling the silence as the technician moved the wand across my belly. And then, there she was, our daughter, tiny, curled, heartbeat strong, a life that almost never had a chance to begin. I looked at that blurry black and white image on the screen and something shifted in me, a sudden fierce knowing. I couldn't live afraid anymore. Fear had taken up too much space in my body. Fear of Kayla, fear of losing control, fear of what I'd already lost. That night when we got home, I took the journals I'd been hiding in my nightstand, the ones filled with angry letters I never sent to her, the ones stained with tears and bile and fear, and I burned them. I watched the pages curl and blacken in the metal tray outside. Watched her words dissolve into smoke, watched mine go with them. Harry came outside and didn't ask questions. He just stood beside me, holding my hand. That was the day I decided she didn't get to live rent-free in my soul anymore. But letting her go didn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It meant finally telling the truth to myself. That I had been emotionally abused for years. That her poison wasn't just physical, it was psychological. That I had been shrinking, appeasing, second-guessing myself just to keep the peace. I started therapy the following week. It was hard at first. My therapist asked gentle questions that cut like scalpels. When did you first feel responsible for other people's emotions? What makes you feel guilty for protecting yourself? What do you believe you have to do to deserve love? I answered through tears, through shaking hands. Sometimes I didn't answer at all, just sat there, letting silence say what I couldn't. We talked about family systems, enmeshment, triangulation, how Kayla had made herself the third party in my marriage from the very beginning, always inserting herself between me and Harry, always demanding to be the center. I had thought of her as toxic, but that word didn't go deep enough. She had been a persecutor, a master manipulator, a woman drowning in her own pain who chose to drag others down rather than reach for the surface. And I had been the perfect target, accommodating, empathic, too eager to belong. Understanding that didn't erase the harm, but it helped me understand why I stayed in it for so long. Because part of me believed that if I could just be good enough, she'd stop hurting me. But people like Kayla don't stop when you're good. They stop when you have boundaries. Real ones. Unmovable ones. When she wrote letters from jail, my in-laws read them but didn't respond. She begged. She pleaded. She even used her unborn baby as leverage. Do this for your granddaughter. But they didn't budge. She's using that baby like a shield, my father-in-law said bitterly one night. Even now, she won't own what she did. Harry didn't say much when we talked about her anymore. I think part of him was grieving, not just the sister he had, but the sister he wanted her to be. He told me one night, I don't know if I ever really saw her clearly. You see her now, I said. He nodded, and I'm never going back. And neither was I. There was a freedom in not explaining myself anymore, not justifying why I didn't want contact, not defending my boundaries, not carrying guilt that was never mine to begin with. I didn't forgive Kayla, not in the way people like to package forgiveness in nice bows. But I did release her, release the hope that she'd ever change, release the belief that I could fix her, release the shame of what she did to me. And in that release, I made room for something new, something tender, something unspoken. I made room for myself. Part 6, The Light That Finds You. She was born in the early morning, when the sky was just beginning to shift from dark to gold. Labor was long, 13 hours. Every contraction felt like a wave I wasn't sure I'd survive. But when I heard her cry for the first time, sharp, urgent, unmistakably alive, it was like the world tilted and righted itself all at once. Harry wept. So did I. Even the nurse beside me smiled, like she was witnessing something sacred. They placed her on my chest, her skin sticky and new. She was warm and blinking and perfect. And in that moment, all the darkness fell away. The fear, the courtroom, the poison, even Kayla's name, none of it mattered, because this little girl, this miracle, had made it here through everything, and so had I. We named her Lila. It means night beauty in Sanskrit. It also means divine play. I love that, because nothing about her felt accidental. She arrived after chaos and became a still point in our lives. Nate met her with wide eyes and quiet awe. He touched her tiny fingers and whispered, "She's small like a kitten." I laughed. So did Harry. And for the first time in what felt like years, the laughter wasn't hollow or cautious. It was full, real, free. The months that followed weren't perfect. No new parenthood is. There were sleepless nights, milk-stained shirts, moments when I doubted myself. But the difference was, I didn't feel alone anymore. Not in my marriage, not in my body, not in my mind. Harry and I talked more openly than ever before about what happened, about what it did to us, about how trauma doesn't just leave, it lingers like smoke after a fire. We went to couples therapy, not because we were broken, but because we wanted to grow stronger. We sat in those sessions, unearthing truths we hadn't dared say out loud, that sometimes loving someone doesn't mean keeping them in your life. That loyalty can become a cage. That healing isn't always pretty, but it is always worth it. And little by little, I began to trust the world again. I stopped checking every plate like it was a threat. I started eating with friends, letting them serve me without flinching. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman, not just a survivor. My parents came to visit often. My mom, who'd once tiptoed around my pain, now cooked with me in the kitchen, laughing as Lila slept in her bassinet. My dad watched Nate play and whispered to me, "You've built something beautiful here." And I had. Even Jamie stayed part of our lives. He came to Lila's naming ceremony, stood in the back with quiet grace. Afterward, he pulled me aside. "She's perfect," he said. I thanked him. Then I paused, took a breath, and said what I had been meaning to say since the day he walked through our door after the poisoning. "I'm so sorry, Jamie." He looked me in the eye steady. "You already said that." "I know, but I need to say it again." He nodded slowly. "And I still don't blame you. Some people break things. Some people build." He gestured at the house, the laughter inside, the baby in my arms. "You're a builder," I cried again. But this time the tears didn't sting, they washed. The last time I saw Kayla was through a courtroom sketch on the local news. No cameras allowed, but someone had captured her expression in graphite. Blank, tired, distant. She was sentenced. There would be time to appeal, time to beg, time to spin her story, but we were done being part of that narrative. We moved houses not long after, nothing drastic, just a little farther out near the hills, somewhere quieter. Harry built a swing set for Nate in the backyard. Lila took her first steps on the grass, wobbly but fearless. And I sit here now writing this with both kids asleep and the windows open to the night air. There's a candle burning on the sill. The scent is something floral, something clean. There's peace in this house, real peace. Not the kind you fake for the sake of appearances, not the kind you negotiate through gritted teeth, but the kind you earn. Every woman I've ever known who has survived something awful has a moment where she realizes, I don't owe my story to the person who broke me. I owe it to the woman I'm becoming. This, what you're reading, is my story, not hers, mine, the rage, the guilt, the healing, the softness that came back, the daughter who made it here, the family that bent but didn't break. So if you're reading this and you've survived someone else's darkness, if you've spent years shrinking, explaining, performing, apologizing, stop. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to be safe, to choose joy, to begin again. I did. And there's nothing more powerful than a woman who finally comes home to herself. Thank you for being here. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you don't miss the next powerful true story of survival and healing. You never know who might need to hear this. If you've ever had to walk away from family for your peace, let me know in the comments. You are not alone. Share this video if you know someone who's ever felt manipulated by a loved one. Like and subscribe for more real-life stories of healing and hope.